Previously on Unscripted.
I'm one of those people who says that SNL hasn't been funny since Eddie Murphy left.
but yeah, you record it every week.
You're listening to Unscripted with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today we're going to talk about the Apple TV series called Severance. Our listeners have been clamoring for us to do this episode for months now, so we're finally doing it. But before we get to that, we're recording on a Saturday morning, and I know that you've been watching the NHL playoffs.
Yes.
And so yesterday, just to set the scene for all the listeners, yesterday was Game 3 of the Montreal-Washington series, and it was a crazy game. Like, things happened in that game that I've never seen before in any game, I think.
Well, I mean, certainly a fight that in between periods that goes where the players are in the bench of the other team.
Yeah, that's one thing I've never seen before. Both starting goalies left the game because of injuries. Like, sometimes you see one leaving. You don't usually see both leaving.
Yeah.
The E-Bug, the emergency backup goalie, had to get dressed for Montreal. And
that guy, I mean, he had his 2 minutes of fame on camera there, but like...
He does not look like a professional athlete.
He looked like it was crazy to see. Like, I was like, who's this guy? And what was his number? 96?
96, what a terrible number for a goalie. I mean, I don't know what numbers they have available. The Canadians have retired so many numbers. They're running out of numbers.
Yeah.
And then you also had the play where Logan Thompson got injured by his own teammate.
You know, I watched the replay of that this morning.
It's bad.
Like, forget the goal. The goal is stunning. But Strome obliterates his own goalie. Like,
I know, obviously it wasn't intentional, but like, I've never seen that.
At first I thought, he hit him and his knee twisted back and that's what happened. But when you see it from a different angle, it's like he cross-checks the goalie. Like, his stick goes right into Thompson's face.
Prior to that, like, Thompson was getting hit in the head with the puck a few times and in the collarbone as well. Like, he's making all these saves with his upper body.
Yeah, it's true. It's rare to see a goalie get hit in the face so many times during a game. Like, he had 2 shots like straight on his mask, and you said like one on his shoulder in between like the mask. So he was already like feeling it, you know?
He seemed to be losing his goalie stick a lot, and then I think on that play where he got cross-checked by his own teammate, I think he was using a regular player's stick. Yeah,
he had a player's stick. The goalie losing his stick, like, that's bull. Like, that's intentional. That's the Dominic Hasek move. Like, I think they throw their stick a lot of times. So players, the goalies that are constantly losing their stick, I don't think it's an accident. I think it's like part of their strategy.
But when Hasek did it, he was smart because he would drop it and it would be right on the goal line. So if the puck is sliding, the stick is going to stop the puck. But here, when Thompson lost his stick, it was almost in the corner of the rink.
You know, I'm going to interrupt you for a sec. We haven't talked about playoff hockey for so long on this show since the Canadians were in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2021. So this is quite a refreshing little conversation.
I know. I was worried about talking about this because we could do a whole episode about this, meaning that we're never going to get to talk about Severance.
Right, of course.
But I did ask you a question yesterday. I'm going to ask you the same question today. If you compare the Montreal Canadiens today to the team that went to the Stanley Cup final against Tampa Bay, which team do you think is actually better? It's not a very simple answer.
No. I mean, the easy answer is to say that it was the 2021 team because the veteran presence, right? And obviously just Carey Price is the huge difference. That
is a huge difference, but also Shea Weber.
Yeah, and then exactly what I was going to say. So those two guys those two guys dragged the Canadians to the final. Like, they dragged them to the final. And then, of course, I reminded you yesterday when we talked, like, the Canadians had this veteran big line, like, with Eric Stahl and Corey Perry, and then Armia was on the line, and like they just like mucked it up, you know, like with the cycle game. So it is a very difficult question, and I still would have to give the edge to the 2021 team just because of Carey Price. But I think this team is just this version of the Canadians is just so interesting because they're so young. So we're seeing like the core of the team. We're seeing like the core of a contending team that's going to be a contending team for years, hopefully to come. We're seeing them all come together at the same time. You know, Suzuki, Caulfield, Sapkowski, Demidov, Gooley, Hudson. You know, like this is the makings of a really interesting franchise. You know, like it's really exciting to see. You know.
So I think I agree. I think that that team with Price and Weber was better. Obviously, Suzuki and Caulfield were on that team, but they're both better now. There's no question.
Well, Caulfield was right out of college. Like,
right.
He didn't even play, and they barely played in the regular season. And if you look at Suzuki's trajectory, like he's improved his point total every single season he's been in the league up till having a tremendous season this year where he's like 11th or 12th in scoring in the whole NHL. You know, like that's really impressive.
But this team is actually small. Like you mentioned, the line of Perry and Stahl and Armia. I know Armia is still there, but this team is actually small, and they did get pushed around by Washington in Game 1 and a little bit in Game 2 as well. But then I guess being at home yesterday changed everything because Montreal did the pushing around yesterday.
The home ice advantage at the Bell Center, I'm like, I'll be the first person to tell you that home ice or home field in any sport is a marginal advantage at best. I mean, obviously, road teams win all the time, right? I mean, it happens in every sport. But like the home ice advantage at the Bell Center, it's something. It's really, really something. Like, and we've seen it. If you've watched all the Canadians games all season, you've seen it all season. The energy in the Bell Center is massive. And the Canadians, especially, I think because they're young and enthusiastic players, they really feed off it. It was like, and it was noticeable last night, you know?
Okay, we'll be right back after this to talk about the Apple TV series called Severance.
You're listening to Unscripted.
I'm Joseph DeMedictis.
And I'm Ross Citrillo.
And we're doing this podcast so we don't have to go home and get a real job.
Exactly.
That's right. And we're doing it to tell you about our pursuit of the dreams we've had since being a kid, being young, trying to get into the entertainment industry. Us, we're mid-career, sort of. We're kind of halfway broken in a way. But we both have these big dreams and big goals.
Aspirations, really.
For our careers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This podcast is about the journey through the industry, trying to make it, but trying not to have to give up.
So listen to our podcast on all the places you might listen to a podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We have our own YouTube channel where you can watch the video version. All the links can be found at you'llnevermakeit.ca. Here's hoping we do.
And now, back to Unscripted.
Okay, Skip, we're back.
All right, so Severance Season 2. This is like, we've been waiting to talk about this, I feel like forever. I mean, obviously, like this season, you know, it's just ended like a few months ago, right? So you watched it first, actually, and you've been waiting for me to watch it, and then finally I did. Do you remember when Season 1 of this aired? Like, how?
I don't remember because I didn't watch it when it aired. I watched it a year or two later.
Right. So Season 1 came out in February of 2022. Like that is how long we've been waiting for Season 2. Back then in 2022, that was, you know, when we did our best of episode. Severance was my favorite show of the year. You hadn't seen it yet at the time. I just loved Season 1. It's so different. The show is like mind-bending. You can't quite figure out exactly what's going on. And then when you tell people what the show is about, when you want to recommend it, it's like it's not easy to explain either. But I just love Season 1, and I was so much anticipating Season 2. And I don't know, like, if you like Season 2 or you like Season 1, we can get into that after, but I was like a little bit not liking Season 2 at the beginning. Like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I was like, oh God, maybe I just should have stopped. You know, like when you like something so much, there's a show or a movie, like, and then they make sequels, right? And then inevitably sometimes the sequels are no good, right? So then I sometimes I wish like I just would have watched the original and leave it at that, because it holds up and it doesn't ruin anything for you. So I was a little bit worried because I didn't love the first 2 episodes. I was so confused. And then but I did really, really start to like the show as it continued, as it went on. And then the last episode just brought everything together for me. I love the last episode so much. So overall, I still really did like season 2.
So you were saying how it's hard to explain the show to people who haven't watched the show.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to explain the show to people who have watched the show also.
100%.
Because I've watched it and I don't understand it. So
well, like the notes I took to do this podcast, like normally, like I have like pretty clear notes. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to talk about our favorite moments, favorite episodes, different themes, what went on. Especially like the last podcast that we did when we talked about adolescence. That was like the easiest notes because there was only 4 episodes. There's hardly any characters. It's straightforward. We're talking more about the themes. This, I mean, my notes are all over the place, and I have so many questions. Like, I don't know, like, there's stuff that I just don't understand. Maybe you will, maybe I will be able to explain stuff to you. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff that's just like, what's going on here, you know? And I don't think you're meant to understand a lot of this stuff. I don't know if we're ever going to know why there's goats. You know, like,
yeah, that's,
you know,
we'll get to that, but so I mean, you know me very well, and
yeah,
you were even surprised when I watched season 1 of this show because you even told me before that I wouldn't like it.
Well, this doesn't seem like your cup of tea, this show at all.
Right, I agree. It's not, because I like shows or movies where the things that happen can actually happen in real life, and obviously this cannot happen in real life. But what I liked about season 1 was, other than the part in the elevator where they go from real life to the severed floor, other than that few seconds in the elevator, pretty much everything else that happens can happen in real life.
Yeah, it's almost like 2 worlds, right? Well, that's what it is, right? The innies and the outies, and what happens in the outside world, things could happen, and what happens in the inside. Well, what happens in the inside is weird because it's like, are they in the 80s? Like, where are they? Like,
I don't know. I don't know where they are, but everything that happened on the severed floor could have happened in a regular office.
Yeah, sure.
But
I mean, I play Tetris at work.
Yeah. But season 2 was not like that. So season 2, first of all, after the end of season 1, and I went back and watched the last episode of season 1.
Well, that was part of the problem too, right? Because it's always hard to remember what happened in a previous season when many years have passed in real time since you've watched. And this show even more, because it's already so confusing. And they started off in such a confusing way, right?
Yeah.
I think we talked about this. Episode 1 and episode 2 should have been reversed.
100%. And they did that on purpose just to confuse people more.
Yeah.
But season 2 was not like season 1. Like I said, everything that happened in season 1, other than the elevator, is legit. But in season 2, there's all these strange things that happen, like the goats that you mentioned. Like, that's not...
You never had a marching band come into your office and do a whole...
That's another one. This is also... All this stuff is in my notes. The goats, the marching band, that stuff, like, does not happen in a regular office.
You're in a huge office. How many floors? 10 floors more, right? Yeah. You don't have a floor of goats?
We don't. Not in our building. We also don't have a marching band.
Shoot.
But even other strange things. For example, the little girl who was the boss, I think her name is Miss Wong. Is that her name?
Yeah. Yeah, Miss Wong. Yeah.
She's like, what is she, 14 years old or something? Who knows?
I was going to say 12, but yeah.
Okay. How is she now in charge of the floor?
Well, Miss Wong is maybe one of my biggest questions of the season. And not just like, first of all, why was she there? Like, in terms of like the writing and director, like, why did they put this character there? Is it just to make it more weird? And then the second thing is, even if you're invested in this world of Lumon and all this stuff, like, what's her point? Like, It was so bizarre, Miss Huang. So like the way I understood it is she's in some kind of Lumon internship.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
every company has internships, so that part is fine. But they're
But are
usually
they,
not
like-
14 years old.
But there's an aspect to this whole show which is beyond the innies and the outies, which is the part that's really where I have the most questions on, which is like it's some kind of cult, right? It's some kind of, I don't want to say religious, but pseudo-religious cult. And I think Miss Huang is like, she's a recruit, right? Like they brainwashed her at like an early age, and she's like a true believer. She's gonna be Lumon forever, right? Like it's really kind of crazy. And she leaves, right? Like she finishes her internship and she leaves. And where is she going to? Like the corporate headquarters, or like where is she
I
going?
think she's just going back to school. Like her internship's done, she's going back to school. But did you notice that like in episode 1, and it came back again, I think in the last episode, she's playing that game called Ring Toss, where you have to push the buttons to try to get the ring to go onto the peg. And
Like I had that when I was like 7.
Correct.
In the 70s.
Yes, yeah. So I didn't even think you could still get that game, but clearly they have it. And then spoiler alert, they force her to break it. They force her to smash the game in the last episode.
Yeah. The most of my questions really, like what I liked about the season is like I really sort of understood a little more, like we all understood a little more about the innies and the outies and the severance procedure, and like just like that whole aspect, which was a little bit, that's what was the mystery of season 1. Like we were trying to understand like how things work, that you finally get a little more clarity on. But like what you really don't have clarity on is like what is the bigger goal of the family that owns Lumon? Like what are they trying to do? Like what's the purpose? Like what was the purpose of having Gemma, Mark's wife, like she's basically kidnapped all this time,
Right.
And they're doing experiments on her. Like why? Like what were they trying to achieve?
My question is, Mark,
Yeah.
thinks that his wife is dead. Like I
Yeah.
guess there was some sort of accident, and he went and identified the body. And
But it was staged for sure.
okay, so how do you stage a death?
Well, the
And
woman
why would you stage a death? Because
Well,
because
why?
because my understanding is the reason he's here is because he wants to try to forget about what happened. So when he goes to work and he goes in the elevator and he goes to the severed floor, he doesn't even know that he ever had a wife. So he certainly doesn't know that his wife is dead. So like for 8 hours a day or whatever it is, he can just go about his day and he doesn't have to think about it. But the minute he goes back up the elevator into the real world, he then remembers that his wife died. So what is the point of all that?
Great questions. Great questions, honestly. Like, the way I see it about Gemma is that they identified her for whatever reason, or maybe they have identified him and her, I don't fully know, as some kind of candidate to improve their chip. Like, they're trying to, like, this is the way I understood it. Like, I don't know if this is true or not. This is total speculation. The severance procedure, they're trying to like take it to the limit of its possibility. Like the chip that they put into, they're trying to like take it as far as it can go. And they've identified her and him in a certain extent as the ideal candidate for this. So they basically faked the car accident, took her away, and then they made him come and, well, I don't know if they made him, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he volunteered to be severed after that. You know the woman who's the one who's supposed to deprogram Mark to, what is this? The word's not deprogram. It's
Reintegrate.
Reintegrate. She's the woman who's gonna reintegrate, the pseudo doctor that's gonna reintegrate Mark. She says to him, "Oh yeah, they have people on the payroll everywhere. They have people at the mortuary, at the police, at the whatever. They own everything. So like they could have." She doesn't seem to bat an eyelash at the fact that they could fake Gemma's death and take her.
Well, I'll tell you this. At the end of each episode, after the credits, there was bonus footage. And I watched it every single time. And it helped a little bit. Like they didn't answer, obviously, any of the questions that I'm asking you now, but they did explain what was going on. So I really enjoyed the bonus footage at the end of each episode. But the frustrating part is when you watch any show on Apple TV or Netflix or whatever streaming service, they never let you watch the credits. Like, they'll just take you to the next episode unless you override it and say that you want to watch the credits. So in order to actually watch this bonus footage, you have to manually override what the video wants to do. So if you don't do that, you're not going to see any of this bonus footage.
I didn't watch any of it, but they do tell you at the beginning of the show to watch it, that it does exist at the end.
Right. And I'm glad that I did.
Now, adding on to the extra footage and extra stuff that they're showing you, there is actually a really good podcast with Ben Stiller, and I forget the other guy's name, the guy who's the main writer of the show, with Ben Stiller, and they go through it was released as the episodes were being released, so they've gone through every episode. They talk about different things and behind the scenes. So it's very, very interesting. Like, if you're a fan of the show, that podcast is really interesting. It's like the official Severance podcast.
Yeah, actually, I found out about the podcast before I started watching the show, and I didn't want to listen to the podcast because I didn't want to spoil anything for myself.
Yeah.
Maybe now I'll listen to it.
So I have much more questions. I have so many more questions.
So do I.
So let me just start with the characters. So a lot of times we start with the characters. So I started writing my notes, and I was like, okay, Mark, blah, blah, blah. Dylan, I wrote some stuff about Dylan. Helena, I wrote some stuff, And then I realized a theme that I had when I started writing my own stuff. The innies of all the characters are much nicer and better people and more likable people than the outies.
Okay, that's possible, but you have to explain something to me, because remember the last episode of season 1 where they're in the outside world and his name, Dylan, flips a switch, and so for about an hour or maybe 45 minutes, the innies are now outside.
Yeah,
and they figure, and in that 45 minutes, they figure out so much stuff.
Yeah.
And so when they come back to work, even when they go through the elevator,
they remember what they saw.
Correct. So now if that's the case, like, Mark knows that his wife is still alive.
Yes.
Even his innie version knows that his wife is still alive.
Well, his innie version knows that his outie version's wife is still alive and is Miss Casey, the psychologist of the floor.
Correct. So if you know that now, that changes everything.
Yeah, well, it did change everything because they started going around with pictures of Miss Casey looking for her. I mean, they only got a glimpse, right? So, it changes everything for sure. That's why the Lumon Corporation, they fired Miss Cobell. Milchick is now in charge, and like they're trying to like do damage control. Like,
the other important thing that we haven't even talked about is Helly. She's actually the owner's daughter.
Well, you found that out at the last minutes of the first season.
Right, but what you didn't know until season 2 is that she's all in. She agrees with her dad. She wants to do this. She wants these people to stay, keep coming to work and keep going to the severed floor. But like, why would she send herself down there? I still don't understand that.
I don't know if she sent herself or if it was like her dad, like the Mr. Egan, the guy who's really in charge of the company, like he sent her. Like we don't know. I'm not sure. But what we do know is that the innie version of Helly like got up in front of a whole group of people and started saying how it's torture being there and all this, right? So they made the Severance procedure look bad.
But so then when you see her
damage control in that.
When you see her like her outie version in the boardroom with her dad and then the other people in charge, she's ruthless and she's pretty much barking out instructions at everyone. She's the one who essentially fired Miss Cobell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she's calling the shots. So if she's the one calling the shots, and she even said, I don't want to go back down there, but she ends up going back down there.
She had to. Well, they forced her, right? So, like that's what I'm saying. 100%. But like, just getting back to my characters, like she's mean and nasty in the outside world, but her innie is so nice. and she's so sympathetic, and Mark falls in love with her, and she's this great. The Helly is such a great character. Same with Mark, right? Outside world, he's miserable, depressed. He doesn't want to do anything. He was an alcoholic. He's like all kinds of, but inside he's this super likable guy that everyone loves and they all look up to him. And Dylan is the classic example, and we have the proof of it because in the outside world they show us that he's trying to find a job. He can't get a job. At home he's mean because he's depressed, and like his relationship with his wife is kind of like just not great anymore. And then somehow his wife's allowed to come meet his innie, which was crazy. And she's a great actress, by the way. Merritt Weaver, the one who plays his wife, she was in a bunch of great roles. And she likes the innie Dylan better than her actual husband, right? Because it's reminding her of like Dylan that she first fell in love with. He's like full of energy. He's this big joker, right? He's sarcastic. He's like, and like she misses that version. Like he was like that at one point, you know. Like I just found it so interesting about the Audis, you know, like how miserable they are.
Do you remember when Dylan went in episode 2? He went on a job interview because he was let go by Lumon, and he went on a job interview at a company that makes doors.
Doors, yeah.
And then he makes a joke about a door prize, and the guy interviewing him did not like that joke.
Not at all.
The
job interview at the door place was actually really funny.
It was
really,
that
really
whole
funny.
interview, that whole job interview scene was very funny. I wrote that down. And episode 2 might have been my favorite episode of the whole season.
Well, episode 2, things become a little bit more clear, right? So you can wrap your mind around like, okay, the Helly that's there is not really Helly, it's really Helena. Like your mind's starting to turn a little bit about stuff, right? Like, but the goats is where my brain just explodes. Like, what's going on with the goats?
Also, another thing I didn't understand. So, Milchick, he has his performance review.
Oh, the performance review is maybe my favorite thing of the whole season.
Okay. So, I mean, we've all had performance reviews, and most of them are a waste of time. I don't really think I've ever had a performance review at any job that I've ever had that actually was meaningful.
Huge waste of time.
And this is hilarious because they have this whole booklet printed out of everything that he's done in the past, since he's been in his new role. And
I love it.
There's like 3 things that he did wrong according to them. And one of them is that he put the paper clips on the papers in the wrong direction. So then you see him later on, he spends hours. He's got a stack of papers and a bunch of paper clips, and he's just practicing putting the paper clips on the papers for hours. I'm like, is this really happening? I could not believe what was going on.
The other thing that he was reprimanded for was that he uses too many big words when he speaks.
Right, yes, that's true. And so then and then later on, and I think it's almost the second to last episode, where the guy is telling him, "We told you, you use such big words. You can't do that anymore." So then he just says, "Eat shit."
Yeah. And then the craziest thing is, like, he's having his performance review, and they bring up these 2 things. He uses too many big words, and he put all the paper clips backwards. These are huge problems, apparently. Like, he's failing at his job because of these 2 things. And then they bring up the fact that the Ortbo, which is the outdoor excursion thingy that they had,
field trip,
went sideways. Like, wouldn't that be the main thing? Like that's actually something that he screwed up. The Orpo went completely sideways. They don't know this, but like Mark and Helly had sex and in the tent, and then Irving figured out that Helly was actually her outie, and she was like a spy, and then they had to terminate the Glasgow block, which I love the terminology that they have. But
it wasn't even his fault that the Ortbo went sideways because Helena was there. It was her fault.
It was her fault. But like, wouldn't that be the main problem of his performance? Not the paper clips. But you know what's funny? Because they do show this scene where Helena the outside world. Helena is having breakfast with her dad or whatever, and she has to cut the waffle in a certain way and eat the food in a certain way, and everything has to be very much exactly in its place. So, like, I guess for like the Egan family and this whole cult or whatever the hell it is, everything has to be like precise. And don't you dare put your paperclip on backwards. Don't you dare. I have more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark's brother-in-law, Rickon, he has some kind of self-help book, I guess, that he's written.
Yes.
Why does Lumon want to adapt the book?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure how the book got into the Lumon building in the first place.
I forget. It happened in season 1. I think Mark brought it somehow.
But I mean,
didn't think that
you're
was
not
possible.
you're not able to bring things into the building. It's impossible. You can't take things
Yeah,
in
I
or
don't
out.
remember. Yeah, I don't remember how it got in. Yeah.
So I don't know why they want to adopt the book, but they don't really want to adopt his book because they want him to make all these changes to the book.
Yeah,
And
they
once he
wanna
makes all
rewrite
those
the book.
changes, it's not even the same book anymore.
And he doesn't care. He's like, they're paying me so much. Right? He's explaining to his wife.
But it's interesting because the outside Mark, the real Mark, hates the book, and the inside Mark thinks it's the best thing ever.
He hates the book. He literally makes fun of the book in front of him. You know?
Yes.
It's so funny. So we talked about Irving for a second. Like, Irving's a good character. In the end, like, he's gone now. He left on a train. He ran away because Bert kind of warned him. So, like, is Bert de-severed? Is Bert, like, normal? Or is he, like, what is he?
So this is another part I didn't understand, because when they're both outside,
Yeah.
they don't know each other. They shouldn't know each other because they've only seen each other on the inside. And remember, the innie person is a completely different person. So, yes, for those 45 minutes where the innies were outside, Irving drove to his house, knocked on his door, but then before he even answered the door, the switch was flipped again, and he's now his outie again. So,
But Bert seems to kind of know him on the outside and does warn him to run away. So, like, I don't fully know, like, what the story is with Bert. And
I also don't know why
Is he just part of the cult?
Why does he have to run away? Like, why?
well, they're going to kill him, I think.
But why? Like, what did he do?
Because he knows too much. Irving figured out too much stuff. He has that whole, like, scrapbook with news clippings and stuff in his house, and I don't know. He figured out about he's like, they think he's dangerous, so they want to get rid of him. Maybe Bert is just like a true believer, sort of like Miss Huang, like, and he's gonna do anything that the cult tells him to do. Like, I don't fully understand that whole thing. Did you like the episode where they went back to Harmony's old hometown, the dark, desolate winter?
I'm glad you asked. So, by the way, that episode was filmed in Newfoundland. I don't know if you knew that.
I looked that up, yeah.
And I did not like that episode at all. I even wrote down in my notes, I did not like this episode.
I didn't like it either, but, like, you did find out important stuff at the end. That was the only thing that was good about it.
Sure. The only good thing about that episode was that there was a good song in that episode, Firewoman by The Cult. Like, this whole show, there's only been 3 good songs or 4 good songs in the whole 2 seasons of this show. One of them was in that episode, Firewoman by The Cult.
Yeah.
In episode 10, you hear the Alan Parsons Project.
That was great.
And then episode 3 was great because Mrs. Cobell is driving in her car. We don't even know where she's going, and she's blasting the Stone Roses. She's got a cassette tape, I think, and she's blasting the Stone Roses in the car. So that
It was so good, right?
who knew Mrs. Cobell was a fan of the Stone Roses? And later on in that episode, I think towards the end, you hear Eminence Front by The Who.
Eminence Front was a big part of the show. I really loved when they put that in.
But other than those 4 songs, there's no music in any other episode, I don't think.
But, like, the main thing we found out about Mrs. Cobell, which was important, is that she actually invented this whole severance procedure. It's her.
So how do they then fire her?
Well, that's why she says to them at the beat when they're firing her, she's like, you can't fire me, you need me. And then, I mean, I don't know, but, like, she's the one that figured all this stuff out, which is crazy because is she a scientist? Like, anyways, I don't know. So I just thought that was interesting, and that was important because in the end, they take her to the cabin where she knows it's like the severed floor when you can go in and out. She figures, I don't know how she does it, but she is able to do it. And that is an amazing scene and an amazing episode where the two marks are able to talk to each other by using the camcorder, right? Like that was really, really a great scene. Like
it was a great
fantastic.
scene. It was frustrating to me that the innie mark was not trusting the outie mark. Like,
but that's what was so good about it, because it's like they're strangers. It's so easy for us to think of them as like the same person, but like for the innie mark, he's like, I don't know you.
fine, but like the outie mark is trying to explain to him, what the situation is in the outside world, in the real world. And whether the innie mark believes him or not, at the end of the workday, you leave the building every day. You don't sleep there.
Yeah.
You don't live there.
Yeah.
So what is the innie mark saying? That he's just not going to leave the building? Which, by the way, that's what ended up happening. He didn't leave the building. Which to me, that the way the season ended was very frustrating to me, because why would he not leave?
Well, I'll explain to you why he wouldn't leave, because he's his own person, right? The way I see it is like he's his own person, right? He didn't want to do the reintegration because he said, like, if we do the reintegration, I'm dead and you're alive. I'm not going to exist anymore. Like, I'm not going to exist anymore, right? Like, that's a big thing. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, because the reintegration to me is like, it's the two parts of the personality. Like, there's always going to be some of innie mark and some of outie mark in the total mark. But to me, it's like Thelma and Louise. This is how the end. Now, bear with me. The ending is Thelma and Louise. They know they're making a bad decision. Thelma and Louise drive off the cliff, and they're like, it doesn't matter because we're going to be with each other. That's all that matters. We're going to do this together. So basically, Innie Mark and Helly, they're running into danger. Maybe they're going to die. Maybe they're not going to die. They don't know what's going to happen, but they don't care. Mark doesn't care, because if I'm going to die, I'm going to die if I leave, because I'm not going to exist anymore. And if I stay, I'm going to be in danger because who knows what they're going to do to me. But at least I'm going to be, my last moments are going to be with Helly, and we're going to be together. That's the way I look at it. But it's really a love story between Helly and Mark, honestly.
I mean, I guess you can say that, but again, I still don't understand why he didn't. He was with his wife.
Yeah.
They were walking out. They were about to leave, and she goes out the door, and he doesn't follow her. I don't get it.
But do you understand? He wasn't with his wife, right? Like he
was with what's her name?
Miss Casey.
Correct.
Right? But I understand what you're saying is because the two marks were able to speak to each other, they were able to devise a plan. So it's like when you go in the elevator and when you come out, you're going to be innie mark, and when you come in, you're going to be outie mark, and then, like they had a plan of like
it was a good plan.
Each of them was. It was great of what each of them was supposed to do as soon as they got into each situation, and he followed the plan to the end, because when they got to the floor and he was innie mark and she was Mrs. Casey, he told her go. And he pushed her out the door, not physically, but he got her out the door. And as soon as she was out the door, she was back as Gemma. And if he would have really followed through with the whole plan, he should have left, right, with her, right? But of course, we need to have season 3, so that's why he stayed.
See, that's what frustrated me, because there doesn't need to be a season 3. I almost think there didn't even need to be a season 2. They're dragging this on, and they're going to keep dragging it on. I mean, and sure, they can drag it on as long as they want. They're the writers, but it could have all been resolved.
I think they said they have a plan for 4 seasons, but I could be wrong about that. Not sure. So let me just ask you some more questions. Like I already asked you about the goat. Like the goats are like baffling to me. So is it like we've already mentioned like the whole thing is a kind of cult, right? Like it is some kind of, you got to be like a true believer in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But like, are they cloning the goats? Is it part of like a cloning thing where they're going to make artificial people? Like I don't understand that. Or which we know, are the goats there for some kind of ritual sacrifice, which seems to be what they're doing at the end, because they do bring a goat to be sacrificed, like towards the end of the thing, right? Like right at the last episode. So the goats is baffling to me. Like it's so weird.
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I have a question for you. So you find out that like all this time they're doing data refining or something. They're doing like their job, which looks like they're playing Tetris. They call it data refining.
Yeah.
So, but you find out like towards the end of season 2 that like they have this plan for Mark, and you see like his progress. He's at 86%, and then he's at 92%, and then he's almost at 100%. And you hear them say that like when he gets to 100%, this is when he's talking to Mrs. Cobell as an outie. When he gets to 100%, that means that Gemma's going to die.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but why do they want her dead? I don't get this.
Well,
and if they wanted her dead, why does he have to complete all these things in order for that to happen?
The only thing I could answer about that is I don't think she's gonna physically die. Like her body is still gonna breathe and exist in the world. I think it's like there's gonna be no more Gemma. Like the outie like version, let's say, I think she's gonna cease to exist. And in that chip or in her brain, it's all the versions of kind of Gemma that are in there. Like I honestly I don't know. Like I really like it's really like my biggest questions about the whole thing is like what are they up to? What is the grand plan of Lumon in the experiment they did on Gemma? Like they made her go into all these different rooms and she had to like face the fear each time, right? She goes to the dentist and then like everything she's doing is like a fear that she has to face, like that she should be scared of. And then obviously the end it's dismantling the baby crib. The whole thing is nuts.
But
like I don't know.
With Gemma, like Mark, he goes to work every day, and then at the end of the day, he goes home. So there's two versions of Mark. But with Gemma, I think there's only one version because she doesn't leave the building ever until the end of the last episode. That's the first time that she's ever left the building.
That's right.
But I could be wrong, but
she does remember that she's Gemma when she's like in her room, I think, right? Like she still remembers that Mark exists. Not when she's doing the experiments, but when she's just like
right,
in
because
her own
you could be
space.
you could be your outie in a certain part of the building, but in another part of the building you're your innie. By the way, that sentence that I just said makes absolutely no sense.
No, zero. And the name of the file he has to complete is called Cold Harbor. But what does playing that game, how does him completing the level help the experiment on Gemma? Like, that's what I didn't understand. Like, they need Mark to do something in order for the experiment with Gemma to proceed or be completed. Like, I don't understand how playing Tetris helped with the Gemma experiments. Like, that I don't get.
I don't get that either.
Well, maybe we're not supposed to. Like, are they going to, maybe they'll explain it to us at one point, or maybe it's one of these things that we're just not supposed to know about. Like, it's just a mystery, right?
The problem with the show is, and this is why I should not be watching this show, because 90% of the stuff that happens in the show can't happen in real life. So,
well, I know you hate that.
Right.
You have to suspend disbelief.
So therefore, even though you and I are saying, why does this happen? And this doesn't make sense. The fact is, because 90% of the stuff that happens doesn't make sense, they could just do whatever they want in this show.
Yeah.
So
I get that. I mean, I don't have any more questions. I love the marching band. I thought the marching band was like amazing. I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And it reminded me of a lot of the stuff that I liked in season 1, like the melon party and the waffle party. Like it's so silly and dumb and weird, So like having the marching band there was just like, I just thought it was like perfect, like in what Severance is all about, really. But
did you notice that?
Go ahead.
Fruit is a big part of this show because in season one they have these watermelon parties, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in season 2, they have a watermelon that's carved to look like the face of Irving.
Yeah.
And then also in season 2, they fire Irving and they fire Dylan, and then they want them back. So the way they try to entice them back, they go to their house, which never would happen in real life. They go to their house with a pineapple and say, "Here's a pineapple. Will you come back to work?"
But it was weird because like the outies shouldn't really care about pineapple. Like that's not going to entice them. But the innies, for them, fruit is huge, I guess, right? It was weird, the face of Irving, and they're like, you can partake in the melon face of Irving. Like, I'm like, what? They're going to eat it now?
That was supposed to be like his funeral, even though he's not dead.
I I mean, what a show, honestly. What a show. Like, we've only scratched the surface because there's so many like things you could talk about, and I just think the performances are really good. I think Adam Scott's really great in his role. I think the guy who plays Dylan is fantastic. He's super funny. Britt Lauer, the girl who plays Helena, I mean, I don't know her from anything else. I think she's awesome in her role, and Milchick's amazing, right? Like, I just think like they're all it's a great cast, and like this, even though the story is weird and strange, it's still really great. So like there are shows that like I've abandoned, right? Shows that I started watching that I didn't finish the season. I just said this is not worth my time, or shows that like had a season 1 and I'm like I'm just not going to watch season 2 or whatever. But like, will you watch season 3?
I mean, I think I don't have a choice because I want to know what happens. But I'm not happy with myself for watching season 2. I'm not happy with myself.
I mean, you have a choice, Josh. It's still a free world. Like, you do have control over your own television and streaming, right? Like,
that's true, yes. But I kind of want to know what happens.
I get that. Sometimes you watch stuff just because you need to know what's going to happen, right? So. Yeah, but I mean, I'm all in. I'm all in on season 3. Whenever it comes out, I'll watch it, and hopefully, I'll still like it.
You know, 2 things I didn't mention in episode 1, which should not have been episode 1, but it was.
Yeah.
You know, they all see each other for the first time since that incident, that 45-minute incident, and everyone's like, "So what did you see? And what did you see? And what did you see?" And they all tell the truth, except for Helly. She lies, but we find out why she lies, because it's not really Helly, it's Helena. So we should have known. That should have been a clue, but I didn't figure it out.
I mean, it was a clue from the beginning, but it was so. I right away I told my wife when we were watching, I'm like, okay, Helly's like a spy. Like it's the innie, the outie. They're switching places. I mean, right away I knew that something was happening, but I didn't know when. Like every time Helly was on screen, I'm like, is this the real one? Is this the fake one? Is this the real one? Is it like, which one are we looking at here? Like, and then only after the Ortbo incident did it become a little bit clearer as to like what was what.
Ortbo is the funniest word I've ever heard.
I love it. Did you ever go on an Ortbo with your current work?
No. We've gone on a field trip. It usually lasts a few hours, and that's it.
Right.
There's no sleeping in tents. So this has nothing to do with the show, but in episode 1, I was happy to see Bob Balaban, the guy who was in a few episodes of Seinfeld.
But which guy was that?
He was one of the replacements. Remember when they have to find replacements for Dylan and Irving? He was one of the replacements.
They bring in like the new crew, and then Mark's like, no, I don't want to deal with these guys, right?
Right, which they lasted, 2 days, I think? Who knows?
Yeah, the new crew, they were all plants, that was a bad situation.
Yeah.
All right, well, Severance, look, we can do a whole other probably episode on Severance and probably talk about it and actually ask more questions about it. So if you're listeners out there, all the listeners, if you can answer any of the questions we asked, you have comments about season 2 of Severance, if you can answer any of the questions that we asked, like what's up with the goats? Is it a cult? How do you get reintegrated? Who's who? What's what? Did we miss anything? Did we misunderstand something? Like, I probably did, but if you're out there, we want your help.
I'm just glad I don't have one of those chips in my head.
Maybe you do and you don't know it.
Maybe.
What happens when you go to work? When you come home from work, do you remember what you did during the day?
I do remember, yes. In fact, because I work from home most of the time, I know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. When you get in the elevator at work, is it like stressful or?
It's actually not, but now it will be.
But you don't know. So it sounds like you're safe, but like you could just have been reintegrated and you just don't know it.
That's true. Okay. We'll be right back after this with some final thoughts.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Hey everyone, Skip here. I'm really excited to invite all of you to follow my new account at Skip Cooks on Instagram and TikTok. I'll be sharing my love of cooking with recipes in the form of 1-minute music videos, all set to some of my favorite songs. Don't miss out, follow me, and let's have some fun in the kitchen.
Unscripted with Skip and Josh is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now, some final thoughts from the guys.
All right. I have a long list of final thoughts, but I'm only going to give you one. And I talked to you about it on the phone last night. And you're not going to know anything that I'm talking about. And any listeners outside of Montreal or the province of Quebec are not going to know anything what I'm talking about. But it's so funny that I have to talk about it.
I can't wait.
There is a TV commercial on in French. And the only French television that I watch is hockey. But I've been watching a lot of it lately. So I usually watch the games in French. And it was on RDS, and it's on TVA Sports now because the different network is carrying the playoffs than the regular season. It's a commercial for Rona. You have Rona in Ontario, right?
You know what? I'm not sure, actually. It's a good question.
So Rona is like a Canadian Home Depot, Lowe's type of situation.
I know what it is because I've been to Montreal, but I don't know if we have it in Ontario. I'm not sure.
They have this commercial. And there's many versions of it. And there's one that's long. There's a 1-minute version of the commercial because it's hysterical. And then there's shorter versions for regular television. They took the song My Sharona by the Knack, the song that everybody knows, and they changed the words and they made this whole song, and the thing is called Mike Sharona.
That's hilarious.
So the commercial is like all these people having hardware emergencies and problems and stuff that they're doing in their house, and that the song is so fast and the words are so fast I can barely understand the French that's going on in the commercial. It's like I can't keep up with it. It's too fast for me. But it gets to the chorus, and then what are you going to do? You got to call Mike Sharona, and there's a guy, Mike, in a Rona uniform with his name tag, Mike, and they're like, we'll call him, and he's like saving everybody's hardware emergency. It is the funniest thing in the world. The best commercial. Like, it's one of the best commercials I've ever seen. Last night at the hockey game, they panned to the crowd on TV, and who's there? Mike from Rona in his uniform with his name tag, the actor who plays in the commercial. And the French announcers on the hockey broadcast are like, oh, it's Mike Sharona. He's here, you know? Like, it was like, it's unreal. It's so unreal. I'm going to send you a link to it so you can watch it. I'll post it on in the description of the podcast so everybody could see it. If you don't speak French, you're not going to know what the hell's going on, but it's funny as hell. It's funny as hell.
So I can't wait to see that because it sounds great. And by the way, while you were talking, I looked it up, and Rona does exist in Ontario.
I figured it does. Yeah, I thought it did. Yeah. All right. It was great talking to you about season 2 of Severance, and I'll talk to you next time.
Have a great week.